Hello and welcome back to the Fractured Rooster Garage. Today we're back on the Healey and it's radiator time. On our first drive we identified that the tank on this was leaking and the fitting was cracked. So that radiator's got to come out and get fixed, and unfortunately that's going to take a couple of weeks, maybe a couple of months. And I'm not waiting for that. So I jumped on eBay and bought a $165 radiator, and that's going in for now. And then while that's getting rebuilt, we'll be able to drive it. If I had all the time in the world, this car could be done in probably a day, 2 days tops. But I'm in between family life, work life, you know how that goes. So I'm working on it here and there as I can. And yeah, today, radiator, some interior tidying up, and I think we might do something about this paint. As you can see, it's fairly hazy and dull. It's a nice, I think it's a single stage red paint. It's got somewhat of a factory orange peel to it, but we're gonna see if we can't polish that out a little bit today. There's a nicer piece over there. I'm not gonna get wild with like a 4, 5, 6 stage anything. I borrowed kind of a mid-grade buffer from a friend of mine, and I'll probably hit it with a single stage paint. Probably just like a medium compound or a light compound. Huh, he didn't give me any pads with this thing. How am I gonna polish with no pads? What? Do I have pads? I feel like I've got pads around here. I do have my own buffer, but it's not a dual action buffer, it's just a rotary. And I was afraid to burn this paint. I don't know how thick this paint is, and it certainly doesn't have any clear coat on it. Looking through the auto body cabinet, there's my polisher. Drop cloth. Well, let me get all this out of here and see what I got. I think we're in luck. I'm seeing multiple pads. All right. Game on. All right, well, let me take these inside to the sink and clean these up. I'll be right back. Not that bad, especially the sides. It's certainly been cut and buffed on before, but this back panel has got a lot of overspray of something on it. I'm not sure what it is, but you can hear it and feel it on there. So I'm going to focus more on the back half of this car to get a lot of that texture off the paint more than anything. So on the back of the car, I'm going to start with some extra heavy cut. Just a quick pass with that to knock off the big stuff. And then maybe a medium or a fine after that, and we'll probably call it a day. Well, I went at that pretty hard, and it's better, but you can still hear. Sounds like I'm running my fingers over a piece of notebook paper. I think it's overspray from the undercoating. There was something laying here, like a floor mat or something. It's much smoother here and here. And then the trunk is just terrible. So my heavy cutting compound is not doing it. I think I'm afraid it's gonna need like a 2000 grit, maybe a wet sand. Well, I just couldn't leave it alone. I thought about it. You can see the black dots there, right? I think that's undercoating. And I've got some adhesive remover on my rag here. And as I'm wiping this stuff, it's not even touching it. Well, it's coming actually, but it's taking a lot of work. Unfortunately, this car was not masked as good as I thought it was when I shot the undercoating. And I'm gonna pay for it now. So, I shall get to it, and I'll see you shortly for that radiator install. Well, you can see all the evidence of the leaky hose fitting here. It's leaking down the tank. Luckily, there's just 4 bolts and 2 hoses to hold this thing in here. Radiator swap will be done in about, I'm gonna guess 5 minutes. Well, it's not rusty, but that's not what I expected to come out of the radiator. Yeah, it's pretty nasty stuff. Kind of glad we did this. Well, now it's got a full 50-50 mix of antifreeze and water. It looks totally race car now. I kind of hate it, but hey, it's temporary. Oh, I'm burping it. Nice. Yeah, well, one step closer. One of the last things that I wanted to do today was to mount the interior trim. And I feel it's best that I take a nap before I do that, because I want the screw holes and locations to match from side to side. And I want them to be spaced nice and evenly and be the perfect offset from the edge of the door and the stuff. Today we're going to correct the paint on this old Healey project, and then we're going to jump inside and finish up the interior. Well, first let me show you a little bit about this paint. It was freshly painted when I bought the car 12 years ago, and it doesn't look terrible, but there are certain areas that have some overspray or some adhesive or something on them. The lower half of this door, you'll hear. Sounds like you're running your hand across a sheet of notebook paper. Now, I've already taken this 2000 grit block and ran it across the top half of the door. Listen to the difference. Maybe you can see the difference. Maybe not, but that's what we're gonna get out of this car. Just about every panel's got some bit of overspray or tree sap, grease, something on it. I should preface all of this with I'm not a detailer. I don't claim to be. I have washed a lot of cars. One of my first jobs actually was at a Ford dealership washing cars. We had 200 cars in that lot, and I would bet I washed those cars at least twice a week. So probably 500 cars a week I would wash. So I'm no stranger to washing, waxing, polishing, or moving some scratches and stuff, but far from an expert. Like I said, this car does have some oil or some grease or some solvent or something on it. So first step was some Citrusolve. I got this on Amazon. It was like 10, 12 bucks. This stuff is amazing. I don't know if you've ever used it, but that stuff, it just uses the power of citrus and it dissolves basically any petroleum product it touches. That stuff had no problem with the undercoating. Typically with an undercoat, in my experience, you need a pretty heavy duty degreaser, if not like a brake cleaner or like the bug and tar remover is basically just a solvent. But a non-organic solvent, heavy, harsh chemical, you must wear gloves, it will eat through your gloves type of stuff. You don't need a respirator, you don't even need gloves. I didn't wear gloves yesterday. Stuff's awesome. I can't say enough good things about it. So I wiped the entire car down, and my rag came out pretty nasty. I'm sure it had some, stain and poly and some clear coats and stuff, overspray all over it. But the Citrusol took it right off, no problem. So that was step one. Step two is going to be this little 2000 grit. I think it's about 2000 grit. Just a little wet sanding block. It's a lot easier than using a clay bar. I hate folding it back and forth, and the clay bar falls apart and it leaves a residue behind. I'm just not a fan. I found one of these a couple of years ago at a local auto parts store, O'Reilly's or AutoZone or something, and I've been using it for years, probably for too long. I should have thrown it away a couple of years ago, but I use something like a Meguiar's Quick Detailer, spritz the fender down and then just make circles with this. I try to avoid any start-stop motion, small circles, big circles, whatever kind of circles you want to make. Just avoid a Z motion, a stop and start motion. So yeah, step one was a degreaser. Step two will be about a 2000 grit. I would call it a wet sand. It's more of like a clay bar. It might even be like a 3,000 or 4,000 grit, to be honest with you. But I think it might take a minute, but it'll get all the junk off the paint and bring it down to a virgin surface, in which we will use, I feel like I just had it. There it is. On that fresh surface, we'll hit it with some ultra cutting compound just to get out any swirls or scratches we might have put in there. And then we'll follow that up with a medium or a light cutting and then a polishing compound after that. Sounds like a lot of work, but it's a very, very small car, and hopefully this will be done in a couple hours. I'm going to avoid any high spots, low spots, edges of fenders, sharp points, just to prevent myself from burning through any paint. This process is pretty self-explanatory. You want to use light pressure, don't push too hard, don't sit in one spot, don't heat up the paint, keep stuff moving. It's very easy. I think people like to make a bigger production about it. Really, you're just sanding the surface, whether you're using sandpaper or a polish, just like brushing your teeth. Really nothing to it. I'll throw the camera up on the tripod and start a time lapse, so I'm the only one that's got to endure the hour or two of pain here. But I'll bring you back when it's all done. On this side, I thought I'd bring you in close just to show you what I'm doing here. And to just, prove the results. You hear that rag? Just to prove there's no trickery here with the spray. You can hear that rag, right? Hear my hand? That's all the peaks on that paint. All the little micro scratches and imperfections. But I wanted to show you how quick this is. Put a spritz on my block, and then I just work it in circles, and listen, you can hear it smooth. You hear that getting quieter? And quieter. And even quieter. It just keeps going. I think it'll continue going as long as you let it. Listen to that now. Hardly anything. And you can feel the paint. The paint almost becomes magnetic. As all those high spots go away, my pad starts making more contact with the surface. It's got more surface area touching the paint. So it starts to, just through like stiction, or the surface tension of this spray lubricant I'm using, wants to hold it in place. So it gets harder and harder to move it around, and that's how you know you're making progress. And then you wipe it off. Look at the difference. I'll spray it again. Do the same test we did when we began. It's the exact same rag. It's almost silent. And look at that shine. There's not even a drop of compound on that yet. A couple coats with compound, and that paint will just look wet and deep. And then I think we're going to hit it with some ceramic coat after that, just to see what happens. So that's the process, down and dirty. A very simple block. That's some quick detailer, but you can honestly use anything. I think even water and a couple drops of soap, like dish soap, would work just fine. You just need to lubricate this pad. We're 67% done, and it's only taken us 20 minutes. So I'm going to finish knocking this out, and then we'll be back with some cutting compound, and I'll show you that process. Well, that wasn't so bad. Thankfully, it's a pretty tiny car. That took 30, maybe 45 minutes. Just long enough to break a sweat, honestly. Next step, some ultra cut compound. This is an extra heavy cut. I probably shouldn't start here.
A chemical compound is a chemical...
Alexa, stop. Damn Alexa. I'm going to move quickly. I'm not going to sit in any one spot very long. But it's just like toothpaste. It's a little gritty. Just smear it on and go. See you back shortly. About another 30 minutes worth of buffing and we're done, and all I can say is wow, look at the results. There's not there's not a surface scratch, there's not a hair, there's not a fingerprint on this paint. Absolutely perfect right now. And I don't know if I'm going to jump to a medium or a fine polish or not. I think we're good here. I think we're good just to ceramic coat the way it sits. Well, it seems like these days you're not YouTube official until you've got an Avalon King sponsorship, and I'm not there yet. However, I have been using this stuff for 2 or 3 cars now. And this is a leftover kit I've got from, I think, my first Prius. I'm not sure, maybe my second. There's the application pad I used, so application sheet I used. I hear a lot that this stuff is snake oil and it doesn't do anything. I'm telling you, it's hard. Once it cures and dries, it definitely works. I put it on many cars at this point, and after a year and a half, they beat up just as well as they did the day I applied the stuff. So think what you want. For 40 bucks, you'll wash your car a quarter of the time. And when you do, the dust and dirt will just disappear. The tree sap, the bird crap, just washes right off. I'm completely amazed. There might be better alternatives, but at the $40 price point, you're not going to find it. This stuff is legit. But super easy to apply. Just make some dots, a little grid pattern. Evenly cover your coating applicator and just wipe it on. You may want to saturate on the first go. I can see that first application was a little streaky. There we go, nice and smooth. So just like this, make cross-hatching patterns. I'm going to go driver to passenger, and then I'm going to come back and do front to rear. Next, just to make a good crosshatch, that way you don't miss any spots. So I've already done one coat, driver to passenger. I want to put a second, a little bit thinner coat on, front to rear. And I believe the purpose of this is just for uniformity, just to make sure it goes on nice and even, and there's no spots that you missed. Because if you miss a spot, you're gonna know it. It's gonna be painfully obvious when you wash the car. Water's gonna beat up everywhere except for that one little square that you missed. Channel your inner Bob Ross and make happy little squares. Well, once you got a good thick layer down, you just use the provided rag and just buff off what's left. And when they say buff off, I think they just mean even out. Grab any drips or runs, smooth it around nice and even. It might not be coming through at home, but I'm telling you, the paint just looks wet. It looks brand new. It looks like it's still curing. All that's left now is interior. I've got to mark all the panels, all the door panels and kick panels. I'm probably gonna throw some tape in there and mark with a Sharpie where I want to drill a hole. I'll put both left and right side panels together and drill one hole through both panels so that all the screws are identical left to right. Yeah, so let's jump in there and get that done. Well, here's the interior panels I keep talking about. I just threw them in the car and just kind of traced a line with some masking tape as to where I wanted the bolts to fall. And I measured every 6 inches just to keep things even. 6-inch spacing on every piece of hardware here. I'll throw in one more down here for symmetry. At each of those 15 locations, we'll have a screw with a recessed washer holding it in place. So let's break out the drill. I got the air conditioner on because it's 100 degrees out today. Trying to keep our reveal even here. Let's drill our first hole. A little scary, but one down. And we'll install our first screw. Goes. All right, one down, many to go. All right, well, there's one of 6 panels installed. I'll save you the time and I'll bring you back when it's all done. Ooh, look at that paint. But seriously, panels are in, they fit well. Now I have to figure out what to do with these door pockets. They come with this like balsa wood that goes in here. It's kind of poor fitting to begin with. I don't really like it. And someone's gonna get in this car eventually. Since there's no door pull, they're gonna grab onto this and pull on it. And as you can see, it's starting to crack already. Fairly flimsy doors. I think I'm gonna get a piece of aluminum or some steel if I have to, and cut that out of aluminum, like a 16th or maybe an 1/8 inch plate, and then wrap the black vinyl that I have around that and put it in here and then bolt it in instead of screw it in. That way there's no sharp screws back here. Because I think this is, supposed to be, it's basically the glove box, if you will, for the car. That way there's no sharp anything in here to snag your hands or your documents. Yeah. But it's pushing 4 a.m. I think I'm going to call it a night. The buff and the ceramic coat was by far a win. And then the bonus item was some interior work, so I'm going to call it here. I'm gonna hit the driveway for an adult beverage, relax a little bit, and we'll be back on this again tomorrow. We'll see you then. Man, I'm not sure why I'm always so surprised at how good that Avalon King turns out, but man, every time.